whaling, okay? And I know you wouldn't, would I be British if I didn't talk about the weather? No, and I know that like ethnically I should be okay with the heat. I'm not okay with the heat because I've been here my whole life, so I don't really know, you know? Like I don't know what you want me to say. Anyway, book recap. I've got an ice cream. Also, I was gonna do this earlier, but I had to go to the dentist and they numbed my thing, and I couldn't even do this. I have a really hilarious video of that. I might show it, might not. I don't know. If I do, then it will be here above my ice cream. Now, if I didn't, then you just saw that for absolutely no reason. But that's why I feel like I need something cold for my mouth. Whatever. It's not actually hurting. But also because it's hot. Because it's hot. But anyway, the real reason why everyone's here is because I finally finished flipping reading Kingdom of Ash. Come on, brother. Now, preliminary thoughts is that everyone told me that I was going to be distraught, so I guess I went into it thinking that like something else was like going to happen. So then when I got to the end, I was like, like I didn't have the same reaction as I did when also my face is so round, I have no business eating this. Anyway, queens, no messages please. What was I gonna say? Oh, for Empire of Storms, so whatever. So I'm gonna try and do a recap, and I'm gonna try and be concise, even though I have quite failed at being concise already. So I love that for me, but listen, Kingdom of Ash, she's a thickums book. I've actually put her away, so we're not going to talk about her right now. And my new thing is I'm going to maybe be doing a video on this. Can you see this? But I've started tapping, so I'm reading Powerless for the first time. I have the whole collection so far. I found out today that there's going to be another novella that follows Fearless, but I'm still on the first book, and I'm like, oh, why would I not know? Like, we left some rights today. I'm like around halfway through, but I've started tabbing because I thought that was kind of fun. And the reason that there isn't any tabs in the first half is because I decided to start tabbing after I was already like 10% through. So anyway, but I'm enjoying my time tabbing. How fun. I have the sleeve too, but I took it off because I was going to take the book to the dentist and I just didn't want to deal with that. Anyway, back to the book. So Kingdom of Ash, Sarah J Maas, the 8th book in the Throne of Glass series. Let's go. So it starts off with a chapter called The Prince, and in that it's from Rowan's perspective, and Rowan is still searching for Aelin, and it's been months. If you don't remember, Aelin was taken by Maeve on the beach at the end of Empire of the Storms, which is the 6th book. Okay, so excuse me, like people with the helicopter or whatever, we're having a discussion right now, okay? Anyway, so that's that, and then we go to a chapter called The Princess, which is from Aelin's perspective, and basically Aelin's been being kept in this like iron box that's stored in this temple on this island, and she's being tortured by Maeve and her little disciple. She's got another person with a blood oath called Can or something like that. Anyway, then we're in part 1, and it's called Armies and Allies, and this is where the chapters start. I'm not sure if I'm going to reference the chapters all the way through, like if I'm going to say chapter 1, chapter 2, or if I'm just going to say, and then I'll probably will start resorting to that. But anyway, we're in the north, and Aiden is reunited with the Bane, and they're like moving the armada, and no one's noticed that like Lysandra is pretending to be Aelin, even though obviously Lysandra doesn't have Aelin's like fire powers, so whatever. And then Aiden's basically still salty that he wouldn't know the plan, and so he's refusing to talk to Lysandra, and he only does when she's pretending to be Aelin, because he needs to be convincing. And then these 6 Valgs appear in the mountain pass, and then they kill 5 and take 1 in for interrogation. And then they reach Alsbrook Castle, and then that's where, like, if you remember, Ren and the Lord, like, what was it, Darrow? I don't remember his name. I think it's Darrow. Took in Evangeline, and so they are reunited with Evangeline, and then Aidan receives a letter from Killian, who's one of the commanders, telling him that Morath's troops have made a landfall in Aldris and destroyed this whole city. And then we skip to Elodie and Gavriel and Rowan and Lorcan, who are in a little city near Dornell. And Rowan has basically found out that Maeve's one of Maeve's commanders, he doesn't know at this point that it's Ken, is torturing Aelin for information. And then we skip to Aelin, and Aelin's been left chained on this altar, and Fenris is there in his wolf form because he's been ordered by his blood bond to stay that way, and he's basically watching her get tortured, and they give her water and food and stuff, but it's all laced with iron, so that will inhibit her powers, because Maeve is trying to torture her and convince Aelin to swear a blood oath to Maeve. And then we skip to, so we're skipping all around the shop, Manon and Dorian and the 13, because they're looking for the Cochrane witches, because Manon is half Cochrane, and Dorian has basically got a plan in his head that he's going to steal seal the word gate himself, because Aelin's been captured, so he needs to find the last key, and he wants to sacrifice himself to make the lock. So Dorian uses the word marks to summon Gavin, and Gavin doesn't want to tell him where the last key is, because he knows what will happen to Elena, because Elena's made a deal with the gods. But he finally does tell him where the key is in Morath, and then he tells Dorian that Damaris, which is the sword, can guide him, and he'll know when he's ready to go to Morath. So Dorian asks Gavin if he's human, and Gavin says, "I can't answer that." I don't know why he can't answer that, but whatever. And then we go back to Rowan, because they're all getting like different information, because basically Elodie goes into the town, because she's the one that won't be recognised, and tries to get information. But anyway, this is kind of melting. Anyway, so basically, one commander tells them that Maeve's in Dornell, another says that she's somewhere else, and then Rowan has a dream that Aelin's pregnant, and there's all these other like kids around her, and then Rowan is like, "No, I will not let Aelin sacrifice herself." La la la. Then we skip to Cole, whatever his name is, because he's sailing for Aurelia, and he doesn't know that Maeve has Aelin yet, so he knows that Aelin is around, but he doesn't realise that that's Lysandra pretending to be Aelin, and that Aelin's actually captured. But with him is Nazarene, Sartak, Falcon, and they're all going on these scouting missions, and then they see the villages that have been burned in Morath, and we also learn at this point that Yrinn is actually pregnant, because they got married. I'm not sure if that came up in Tower of Dawn. I think it did. They got married, they're having a kid, but Cole doesn't actually know at this point, technically. But we know, because Yrinn knows, obviously. Anyway, back with Manon, a white bear tries to attack her, and then it shifts, and we find out that it's the Stygian spiders, and that Manon had tricked in Air of Fire, so a few books back. And it's the same spider that took the 20 years from Falcon for the trade, and that's how the spider got the shifting power. Oh my god, I'm choking. Anyway, maybe I shouldn't have edited this and done this at the same time, but whatever. And then the spider tells Manon that she can lead the Cochranes, and Dorian has in this time been practicing his magic, and he's found out that he can use other things, like not just ice, and so he's wondering, can I be a shapeshifter? Anyway, back with Aelin. Ken takes her to see Maeve, and then Aelin realises that they're actually in Dornell, and then Maeve puts Mab's crown on Aelin and then makes her kneel on broken glass or whatever. And then Connell, who is Fenris's brother, by the way, is in his wolf form and is forced by Maeve to transform and tell Fenris that he is a disgrace, so that his brother is a disgrace. If you don't remember, the only reason that Fenris has really been loyal to Maeve this whole time is because Maeve has Connell. And he's basically been like Maeve's, not Connell, but Fenris has basically been at Maeve's beck and call / his, almost like Rysand from Akatar vibes, that like he's basically like Maeve's whore. It's really horrible to say, because he's worried about Connell. Anyway, then Maeve reveals that she knows that Lysandra is actually pretending to be alien, and then Maeve orders Connell to do something, and that thing, he has to take a knife, and then he plunges it in his own heart and kills himself in front of Fenris. That was so sad. Anyway, I didn't even have any, like, Connell is barely mentioned, but I was like, oh my god, that's so sad. Anyway, Aelin manages to then cut Cairn and Maeve with the shards of glass, and then for a second, Aelin sees that Maeve's blood is actually black. Who else's blood is black? Ding-a-ling-a-ling. Why do I keep coughing? I keep eating, that's why. And then we had this chapter where Fenris removes the shards of glass from Aelin. And then we're back with Lysandra and the forces, and they're trying to make their move against Erewhon's like people, but Erewhon send like 5,000 soldiers, and they do manage to defeat them. But then Darrow sends a message with Nox. If you remember, Nox was in the very first book. He was one of the other champions. To tell them to bring the army to meet him the next day. But then we go to Nezrin and Sartak, who report that they see 10,000 army people, and they're marching toward Aniel, which is where Cole's family is from. So then they say, we're going to go to Aniel and save them, and then secure the Ferrian Gap or whatever, and then they'll go to Terrasan. And then Cole and Yeren plan to ride ahead on a rook and then warn Aniel. Back with Aelin, she feels that her mother is with her and telling her to be brave and all of that. And then Aelin's fighting back and like hammering against the iron box and breaking it. And this allows Rowan to feel like a surge in his mating bond, so he knows that she's there, and the others feel it too. So they realise that Aelin is in Dornell, and so Rowan says that they're going to lure Maeve away so they can sneak in and rescue Aelin. Risky business, you know? Anyway, the Spider and Manon, the Spiders led Manon to the camp with the 75 Cochrane witches. Glennis is one of these witches, and the Cochranes basically answer to her, and we find out that Glennon is Manon's great-grandmom. I think great-great-grandmother or just great? I think just great. Anyway, but then the Iron Teeth patrol found Manon and the Cochranes, and the patrollers, 2 yellow-leg covens. Durian is also almost eaten by Wyvern at one point, but he turns his like whole body into solid flame and then burns the Wyvern. And Manon swears that she did not lead the Iron Teeth to them, but Dorian, the Cochranes, by the way. But Dorian's like, yes, you did. This is how you were gonna get them basically force them to like see that you would try to save them, so you could earn their trust. They're playing real dangerous games, I'm telling you. Okay, anyway, and then we find out that Glennis is Manon's father's grandmother. So yeah, great-grandmother. And her dad's name was actually Tristan. So Manon meets Bronwyn, who is her cousin. And Bronwyn says that the Cochranes will never recognise Manon as the queen. That's real sad. And then Dorian realises that the Spiders are actually also Valk. So Dorian tells Manon to speak with Glennis to figure out how they can convince the Cochranes to join them. And then Glennis says that only a Cochrane queen can light the flame of war, which is how they summon all the witches to fight. And so they take the flame that's been burning for years to the hearth in various like Cochrane camps, and then Manon has to be accepted as a queen, but before she can do that. And then the Cochranes are going to head to Ilwali to help the other Cochranes that are there. If that's how you say that name, I don't really know. Anyway, as you said, Darren, as before I said, I'm not speaking anymore, Darrow had summoned Aelin, who's actually Lysandra though, to meet with the other lords, and so they do, and then when they get there, they vote on like where to take their forces, and they decide to take them to Orninth, and then a stranger comes into the tent who's actually a Valg and attacks Lysandra slash Alien and says that Erewhon has sent him, whatever. Anyway, the Valg scents Lysandra's blood, so she knows that she's a shifter and not alien, and sends a message through his bond to the other Valgs to tell them, and then the Valg has to kill. No, the Valg has to be killed before he can expose her to everyone, and then Aiden reveals that he was going to ignore the Lord's vote anyway, and continue to move his legion towards the border instead, and then Nox finds Lysandra as Aelin and tells her that he knows that she's a shifter and that she's not actually Aelin because he knew Selena Sardathinian when they were fighting in the competition in Throne of Glass, and he's basically been working as a spy for the rebels this whole time. And then Lysandra tells Nox that she needs his help, and he says, all right, hun. And then he gives Lord Darrow, Lord Gunnar, Lord Sloane, and Ironwood all wine that's laced with something that makes them go to sleep. And then their men are also given the same thing. So then they wake up the next day and the whole they've gone. Sneaky, sneaky. Anyway, then Cole and Yeren arrive in Aniel and they're going to meet Cole's father and tell him that there's 10,000 troops heading right their way. And then the Rooks arrive and the Foot army is like a week behind, and they need to like do all of that. But Marath's army is, I think, 3 days away. Or something like that. Back with Maeve is giving Aelin false memories and like what could have been if Erewhon had never come to Aurelia, and then in the fake memory she also tells Aelin like her story, that she was a young queen who was born in a world where power is not inherited but like born, and that she had the power that was stronger than everyone, and then 3 kings came to find her and like take her hand, and she just picked the eldest one for his library. So that she could learn from it, but then she learned that there were other worlds more than her own, like, well, you know, with blue sky and like a green land and la la la, not like dark like her world, and that she could create doors between the worlds, but that had been outlawed, but she found a spell to do that in the library, and then she came to the new world and became a queen there, and then the 3 kings found that, and then found that world, and she fought them. But they didn't actually know that it was her, and then she sent 2 back, and the last was left broken, and he hid, and then the 3 kings had found a way to like permanently open a gate between the worlds, and they made like 3 keys to do that, and then she wants the key so that she can banish the king back to his world, and so that she can keep this new lovely one, and she kindly asks Aelin what she thinks the keys are, where she thinks the keys are, and thinking that if she tricks her with the false memory, she'll reveal the true location. But obviously, Aelin's like, I know what you're doing. And then Maeve says she doesn't want to destroy this world; she wants to save it. She's trying to appeal to Aelin's like good side. And then Maeve tells Aelin that she's heard that a Valg commander has been caught with the collar, and she plans to go and retrieve the collar and put it on Aelin. And then Ken is going to move Aelin while Maeve is gone to some place that's more secure. Meanwhile, Rowan already knew that Maeve would want the collar, so he had Elodie. Oh, this is when Elodie goes in. Okay, now Elodie goes in and she spreads a fake rumor in Dornell or whatever, in the taverns, about the Valg prince, and so Elodie goes into the city and asks after Ken, whatever, so they can figure out where like Aelin's being kept. Lysandra, back where she is scouting ahead of the army, and she sees 50,000. The numbers are just going up. Troops being held by being led by 5 Valg princes, and they're coming towards them. But they only have an army of 25,000, and they begin fighting. But everything's being destroyed by the Valg, and obviously Lysandra can't use Aelin's firepower, and the soldiers are beginning to notice. Back in Dornell, Elodie finds a tavern with Fae soldiers stationed there, and she lies and she tells them like a fake name, and that she Ken told her to meet her there. But obviously they won't tell her where Ken is, but they reveal that Maeve has left Dornell. And then Elodie leaves, but one of the Fae follow her and says like her name is Esau, and that she should stay away from Ken. And then Esau reveals that Ken is at the Eastern camp, and that she knows that Elodie's actually with Rowan and Laura Can, because she recognised Elodie's clothes because she was wearing some anyway. Basically Issa used to be Lorcan's lover, like just for a little bit, and so Issa and her sister Dresenda tell her that the where loopholes about the camp so they can go in when the camp is at the weakest. And then she also reveals, Issa this is, that she visited Mistwood in the spring and met Aelin when she was there, and that's why she's helping them. So Rowan will break into the camp through the southern entrance. Gavriel and Lorcan will wait for him to signal, go into the other entrance, and then they can create a diversion. Back with the Cochrans, Manon, Dorian, 13, all in this one camp together, and there's all these 7 fires. And Dorian's still trying to learn how to shift, and Glenys gives Manon brooms to deliver to the Cochrans through the camp, and then Manon knows that it has to be important, but she doesn't know why. And then Catherine, who's a Cochran that was watching the Wyvern, reveals that Abrox and Naren, who is Astrin's Wyvern, are mates. And then it's really funny because there's a bit where Abrox was like, took you long enough to figure that out. Anyway, and then Rhiannon Cochran's crown of stars was stolen from her dying body by Baba Yellow Your Legs, and it hasn't been seen yet. And then Dorian, Rhiannon and Manon get into a fight because he says that she cares or something, and then she's like, no I don't, and then Dorian tells her that, well, he cares about her, and then she calls him a fool, and then Dorian wakes up and he's successfully for the first time shifted his eyes from blue to brown, so he can do the shifting. It just takes him a real lot of effort. Back in Dornell, or the eastern camps, wherever, Aelin's still in the box, but she's been moved to the camp now. Cairn plans to burn Aelin with fire. Aelin believes that she's found a way that she can get to Cairn and get Cairn to kill her and end it all. But then Rowan hears a voice, which is the Lady of Light, urging him to hurry up because he knows what's about to happen. So Aelin continues to toy with Cairn, says that the guard talks about him and says that he's spineless, la la la, and then Cairn hits her and unlocks her and tries to burn her with the fire, but then she hits him and attempts to run, but then he grabs her. Then Fenris gets involved and he fights against the blood oath, refusing to let it thingy him so it severs, so it will kill him, but he does it anyway, and then he attacks Cairn, severing the blood oath completely. So then there's a fight between Cairn and Fenris, and Aelin uses a fire poking thing to break the chains on her feet and then run. So Aelin escapes, she's fighting the soldiers, heading in the opposite direction, of course, because it can't be simple, to Rowan, and then Lorcan sees Aelin, and then there's soldiers surrounding her. So she kills them all and then runs for Lorcan, and then Rowan finds them, and then Aelin pleads for Rowan. So Rowan and Gabriel head, about Fenris, so then Rowan and Gabriel go back into the camp to go and get him. When Rowan and Gabriel find Cairn and Fenris, they're both injured in the tent. Fenris is obviously slowly dying because of the blood oath, and Rowan tells Gabriel to heal Cairn and then chains him to the table because he's now going to torture Cairn the way that he did to Aelin. It's dark. And then Elodie sees Lorcan arrive back with Aelin, and Aelin is screaming for them to quickly remove the shackles, but they can't. And then they talk about the ward mark. You need the word marks to open in order to remove them, so you need to calm down. And then Aelin's scars, they realize, have gone because Maeve's erased them, because after they were burning her skin and then healing her, burning her, then healing her, burning her, then healing her. So all those scars that she had on her back from when she was in that slave camp thing, right at the start, all gone, all gone. Anyway, so where did I get to? Oh, they've removed her tattoo as well. Whatever. And then Aelin goes to Fenris as he lays dying, and then she makes him swear a blood oath to her because it's the only way that she knows to save him, and then she orders him that he has to live. And then the little folk people, now these little folk people always confuse me because I just forget that they exist, but they appear and tell them to follow them, and they leave them to a safe place with fire and stuff like that, and then Aelin lays down, but she doesn't actually speak to Rowan. Back wherever they are, Dorian is still learning how to shift, and it's taken him 3 days to change the poor guy, to change his eye colour back to his original eye colour, which is a bit sad. Man needs to work on his powers, I guess. but he's trying. And then, sorry, almost closed my notes. We find out that the Manon and the other witches reach Al Wali, but it's too late because like many of the Cochrane witches are already dead and only a few have gotten away. And then Manon begins digging because they're going to bury them all, which is really cute. And then 4 Cochrane covens make it to the king and queen of El Wali, and they're aiding them. And so El Wali are fighting against Marath's army. And then Dorian goes to summon Gavin, but instead Keltane, or Caitlin, whatever her name is, she's summoned, and she says she's been forbidden from telling him what it's like after death and like who's there with her, but she confirms that the final key is in Marath, and she tells him that he needs to go to the keep because that's the only place Erewhon would ever keep it. And then Keltane warns him to like go there, get the key and leave, because otherwise he'll have a collar on him again. And obviously that was bad the first time. And then Dorian is able to finally transform himself into a raven, and he sees Manon, but she also saw the whole thing about what was happening and that he plans to go to Marath all by himself, which she thinks is obviously stupid. Back with Aiden, they're all still fighting. It's been like 3 days of fighting, and the men are starting to question like why Aelin doesn't use her powers. And then Aiden says that they can retreat north towards Prananth and cross the river and stuff like that. And then Lysandra finds Aiden and shifts back to her human form, but she's naked, and they have a fight because Aiden tells her that Aelin's and Aelin's plan was like terrible, and she can't pretend to be Aelin because the people rely on her power and she doesn't have that. And then Aiden says that she agreed to let Aelin go to her death and like didn't tell anyone, and then basically he tells her that she's ruined everything, and then throws her out of his tent into the snow when she's unclothed. Okay, crazy. And then Aelin doesn't believe that she's been rescued, but the little folk are like, no, you've been rescued. And then Rowan tells her that Ken is dead and that he skinned him alive. Whatever. And then Aelin told him that she would do if he ever whipped her, and then he because Aelin had said that she would do that, and then Rowan also said that he cut off his head and burnt it. And then we find out that Aelin has actually been gone and been in captivity for 2 months or something. And then a boat appears on the lake, and there's 2 people pulling it to whatever, and then we find out that the little folk give Aelin the crown of Mab because she's both Brennan's heir and Mab's heir, so she's the queen of the little people too, or the little folk, not little people. And then Lorican tells Elodie that he wasn't crawling towards Maeve on the beach but crawling for Aelin, just if you wanted to know that. And then we get that Aelin and the others are like entering this like territory, and there's like all these weird creatures there, and they like treasure. So Aelin leaves behind the boat and goes into the caves, and then Fenris, Gabrielle, Rowan go with her, but Lorican and Elodie stay on the boat. And then Aelin comes to the cave to like get gold and stuff for the journey, and Fenris is now finally back in his human form because he found it hard to do that. And then he says he hugs Aelin and he tells the others what Maeve made Connell do, and then Aelin finds a ring for her and Rowan to wear because they're married, and then Rowan tells her that he will redo the tattoo and add a new one, so don't you even worry. And then nothing important happens for a bit, and then Erewhon takes his army 5 days to reach Aniel, and we find out there that Cole's mother has left Aniel with Terran, who is Cole's brother, and then Cole's father is actually the one that tells Cole that Yeren is pregnant because he noticed that she was often touching her belly, so that's where we find out. Also, Cole's dad, not a nice person. Anyway, back with Manon, she wants to go to the Fenrir Gap, because it's under Petra's control, and she wants to ask Petra because Petra was like good to her, or like not good, but she was merciful at least. And then Manon sees Dorian talking to Caitlin and fights with him because he wants to go to Marath, and tells him that he needs to prove himself first if he wants to do that, because he needs to sneak into the Fenrir Gap and tell them who's there. He says, okay, I'll give it a shot. I get it, a trial run. And then Aelin and the others are at sea, whatever. And then Aelin and Rowan like talk about the fact that they're actually mates, and then there's like a steamy scene. Anyway, and then after all that, Aelin speaks to Lorcan and tells him that she can't trust him fully, and tells him to swear the blood oath to her, and then he'll be welcome in Terrasan, and can go wherever he wants. But if he refuses, then he can't go to Terrasan. But that means he'll never see Elodie again. So Lorcan swears the blood oath because but he wants to be with Elodie, obviously, even though Elodie's not having any of it right now. Back with Dorian, he's on his way to the Fenrir Gap with Man on the 13, and he's shifting himself to make him look like Valg, and he flies on Nairn, who is Astrin's wyvern, and then he comes back and says that the matrons aren't there, and it's just Petra and 300 Iron Teeth witches. And then Aelin is backtrack a bit. Man on the 13 enter the Omega to see Petra and ask her to gather the people, and then Manon reveals that her grandmother plans to rule all the witches as their high witch and the high queen and the only queen, and that she wants to get rid of all of the yellow legs, all the blue buds, and make them all her subjects. And so she's given the speech, and she's asking them to join her instead. Now we go to Aelin, who's having a dream that she's still a captive, and she's angry that she was the one who was chosen to pay the price, and she's hoping that Dorian finds a key and does it and forms the lock so that she doesn't have to. And Rowan is training Aelin because she needs to build back like her muscle and her strength. And Aelin has been teaching them how to draw word marks because obviously they're important. Oh my god, I'm tired. This is going to be a real long summary. I thought it was going to be much quicker than this. Anyway, the battle in Aniel has been going on for 5 days, and then Arisha tells Yeren that she knows that she's pregnant, but Yeren hasn't told anyone. Yeren hasn't told Cole, so he doesn't know, but he does know though. And then a horn sounds, and we find out that Hassar has arrived with the cavalry. Back with Aidan and his army going to Perenanth, and the Marath soldiers are like a day behind them. The Marath soldiers finally reach there, and then Aidan has a shield which belonged to Aelin's father, but he never told anyone that he had it, or he didn't tell her. And the Marath army is coming towards them across the frozen river. So Faye on Aidan's side use their magic to break it, and they drown the soldiers. In the meantime, Lysandra is fighting as in her wyvern form, but is losing. They're all losing. Marath has way too many numbers compared to them, and so the soldiers start fleeing, and so Lysandra knows she has to do something. So Lysandra enters the battlefield as Aelin with a sword, and she's going to fight the Valg to like give hope, and she's fighting to Ilken, and Aidan is running towards her because he thinks she's going to die, and he's been regretting everything he said. And then Lysandra is hit by the Alken with the poison claws, and Aidan reaches her, and he knows that he needs to take the poison out of her before she dies. Meanwhile, some of the Marath witches arrive and bring a tower, and then a witch is yielding in the tower, so she sacrifices herself and can amplify the power of the tower and use it to destroy Aidan's army. So one blast completely destroys like 4,000 of Aidan's soldiers. And then we've got Cole, Nezarin, Sartak, and Hassar doing battle strategy, and then Aelin and Rowan and like them lot, I can't bother to name them all. They all arrive. Aelin cries seeing Cole walking, and she hugs him. And then there's Aelin recognizes Yeren because of what happened in Assassin's Blade, and Yeren gives her the note that Aelin had given her all those years ago. And then Cole says, "Yeah, we're married." And then Aelin tells him that I'm married to Rowan, and then she also reveals that Gabriel is Aidan's father, because obviously all that took place when they were all separated in Empire of Storms and Tower of Law. Anyway, and then Falcon arrives in the tent but he's like young again. And then Aelin had met him a long time ago in Xandria too. And then Nesrin tells Aelin that Falcon is Lysandra's uncle, and Nesrin explains that the Stygian spiders are actually Valg, and that they only answer to the Valg queen, Maeve. That's why her blood was black. And then Nesrin also tells them like everything that the spiders told her about Maeve, and then she tells them that the Valg are parasites and that Euron has found a way to like get rid of them from human hosts. And then Aelin tells them that she was kept captive for 2 months, and that she's struggling because she feels like Maeve has broken her because, oh, by the way, she can't do her powers right now. And then Elodie and Laura can have a fight. I mean, when did they not? Because he doesn't understand how he could have loved Maeve, and Lorcan tells her that she's jealous, and then she's like, I don't care if you are alive or dead on the battlefield. That is savage. And then Manon and 13 return to the Cochrans, and Manon asks Glenys if Rhiannon, her half-sister, believed that the Iron Teeth would change, and Glenys said that she thought that she did, and wanted to find if Manon also believed that she could rule the witches together. And then Durin is practicing how to fly as a raven, so he can eventually fly 2 more Wrath. Then Lysandra wakes up in the tent, and Aidan's with her, and he tells her that they yielded and that they've been on the run, and Lysandra's body has shifted, and now all the soldiers know that Aelin isn't with them. And Aidan apologizes, and Lysandra tells Aidan that despite everything that she was made to do by a Robin, because it's like horrible, she's never felt more degraded. I can't even believe this is the same person as before, but humiliated when he threw her out from his tent. You tell him, girl. She was angry. Anyway, she tells him that he's ruined everything and she doesn't want to speak to him. And then Ren and Darrow have now arrived, and Darrow says that Aidan is stripped of his rank now, and Darrow says that they will execute Lysandra if she shifts into Aelin again, and then Darrow says that Aidan needs to give back the sword of Ornith or whatever, and Aidan does because he's like, whatever. And then they realise that the army is trapped. Back with Cole, Cole tells Euron that he knows that she's pregnant, and then Aelin meets Cole's father and she humiliates him and tells him to basically go to hell. And then Aelin would be the heir to Donnell, as Maeve isn't really a Fae Queen at all. So really, she's like, where does she not rule at this point? Like, what is she not the heir of, is what I'd like to know. And Durian finally is able to shift into a female witch, and then he confronts Manon, and she is too afraid to ask him to stay and not go to Marath, even though she wants him to stay. And then the 3 Iron Teeth matrons find them, and the Yellow Legs matron is wearing Rhiannon's crown of stars. Manon fights him. She kills the Yellow Legs matron, takes the crown. Manon tells Petra's mother to go because she feels like she's indebted to Petra, and he said, you go to Petra, she could decide what to do with you. And then Manon's grandmother flees on her wyvern, and then Glenys crowns Manon the Queen of the Witches. And then Robin doesn't know if Aelin can use her powers because she hasn't done it since they've saved her from Maeve. And then Fenris tells Rowan that Ken burned her with fire, and so she's a bit scared of fire right now. But then Rowan, Aelin and the others take swords from Cole's father's keep, whatever, and then the attacks start happening, and then Aelin finally appears on the battlefield in the armour with her sword, but not with her power. And then the Marath soldiers are planning to break the dam in Ania, which will destroy everything, but Sartak and Nazrin attack the soldiers, trying to use the battering ram to break the dam, but Lorcan is on the battlefield fighting against 10 Valg, and one of them cuts his back open. And then Sartak and Nesrin arrive back at the keep to tell them that the dam will still collapse soon anyway, and they may not have time to escape, and they'll lose most of their forces if the dam breaks. And then Elodie realises that Lorcan didn't return with them, and Rowan tells Fenris to use his magic to jump and like find him, but Fenris says he can't jump, like he can't do it right now. And then Elodie takes Cole's horse and rides out herself to find Lorcan. Fenris hasn't been able to jump since Connell died, and because it was a shared power, and he doesn't know if he can still do it because obviously his brother's not alive anymore. Elodie does find Lorcan, and he's very badly wounded, and she gets him on the horse, and they race for the gate because they need to get there before the dam breaks. And then Lorcan tells Elodie to leave him because he's weighing the horse down and slowing them down. And Lorcan tells Elodie that he loves her and tells her to let him go, but she's like, no. And they're like a mile out when the dam bursts. But Aelin is riding on Bort's Rook into the plain, and then Rowan realizes that Aelin has been making the descent into her powers for the past like 3 months, and it's why she hasn't been using them. It's been building up so that when she does use them, she can use them against Erewhon to kill him. But instead she's now going to, because if you didn't realize, her power was depleted before, that's why Maeve was able to get the upper hand on her, so that's what she was trying to do. But she instead tries to use them to blast the water that's coming from the dam and turning it to steam to save the forces. Lovely stuff. And then Manon goes and says sorry to Dorian, but Dorian's going to go anyway, and then she finally says to him, you can stay, we can cause an alliance between Arden and the Cochrans, like we could get married. But Dorian's like, I don't believe you're going to be happy if we are confined in marriage. But then they sleep together and go to sleep, and then when they wake up, Dorian's already gone, and he took the two word keys with him. Aiden tells Ren that he needs to go and ask everyone for help, just ask everyone, okay? Back everywhere else, I'm going to be much quicker now because I realise this is taking too long. Lorcan wakes up, Elodie's beside him. She tells him that she does love him. Back with Manon and the Cochrans, they get word that Terrasen is calling for help. She's like, we're gonna do that, okay? And so she lights the fire. Now they're all going, right? Because she's the queen of the witches now. Anyway, Aelin tells Rowan that she sent letters to Aiden as well as like Rowan's uncle and Essa, everyone basically, convincing them to leave Maeve, and she told them that Maeve is Valk. And then Cashin and his soldiers arrive, and the Hassar, Cashin, Sartag, all the armies, they're all going to go to Terrasen, and Yaran is currently healing all the people that are infected by the Valk. Aelin is wondering if Yurin can actually use her power on like Erewhon and Maeve, and there's been like books and stuff, but they don't really find anything. And then there's the Mountain Men who want to part of Eniel's territory and whatever. Listen, brother, there's other things to do. Carl's father is like, no. Aelin's like, listen, we outrank you, whatever. Cole's literally the hand of the king. Shut up. They're gonna get what they want. And then Cole's father shows like a trunk of letters from his mother to Cole, and he says that she was writing to him for years, but he never sent them. And so this whole time Cole thought that his mother didn't care about him, and equally his mother thought that Cole didn't care, but the dad's just a bad guy, you know. Anyway, Cole gives the men the territory that they want, and then half the rooks and the whatever, all the people, they go and draw out the forces from the Fenrir Gap. Now we're on part 2. It's called Gods and Gates. Oh my god. Guys, this is gonna be a long video, sorry. I'm like, there's still half more to go. My ice cream is melting. Anyway, Dorian arrives in a mass. In Morath, he sneaks in and he sees Maeve and Erewhon together because Maeve has come to Morath. And then back wherever, Aiden, Lysandra, all them lot arrive in Ornance. Maeve reveals to Erewhon that she's actually the Val Queen, and Maeve's no longer the Queen of Dornell because of Aelin's letters. And Maeve creates a portal to show him the spiders. And then Erewhon struggles to like find a host for the 6 Valg princesses, but Maeve says he can put them in the spiders. And then, because they've got a name, but I'm not saying it because it's too difficult to say. And then basically Erewhon is planning to bring his brothers back to this world, and he agrees to work with Maeve and put them princesses in the spiders. Maeve leaves the chambers, but she also knows that Dorian is there. And then Maeve tells Dorian they can work together if they want. Because she just wants the keys, because she just wants to get rid of Erewhon, whatever. So they can like work together and do all of that. Bring the spiders, and Dorian's like, okay, I'll marry you. Listen, when I saw that, I was like, but what about everything that just happened with Manon? Anyway, we also find out that Vernon is still at Morath, and he gives Dorian an idea. So Dorian shifts into Vernon to speak to Erewhon and ask him questions, but he doesn't find out anything important. Nezrin and Sartak have reached the Fenrir Gap, but there's like no sign of the enemy. And Carl and Gabriel like have a talk about fatherhood. It's not really that important. So whatever, Maeve brings the 6 spiders and the princesses are now in them, and Dorian is hunting for the key, but every door's locked, and then he finally finds this sarcophagus, and it just has rows of like collars in there. Then he finds a tomb of Elena and Gavin. No, not Elena. He finds a tomb where Elena and Gavin trapped Erewhon. And the collars like affect him, and Maeve saves him, but Maeve tells him that she doesn't want to be like Erewhon and his brothers, and Dorian believes that the final key is in Erewhon's tower, but he can't just like go in there. So he wants Maeve to do it so that he can seduce Erewhon and get entry. Maeve tries to do that, but Erewhon rejects her, and then Maeve meets Erewhon the next day, but Dorian hides in her pocket as a mouse. I'm sorry, I completely forgot that happened because that's flipping hilarious. And basically Erewhon wants Maeve to summon all the spiders for him, and then Maeve tells him that he should save him for a battle, and says that she would demonstrate her power to him by showing his brothers to him. And then Aiden and his people are setting up a trap in Morath, and they're going to set off all the explosives and destroy the witch towers. Morath has now sent 100,000 soldiers. I don't know where all these people are coming from. Anyway, Maeve plans to trick Erewhon by showing him an illusion of his brothers while Dorian sneaks into the tower. So Maeve opens a portal to get him into the tower. There, in the tower, Dorian finds this woman in Erewhon's bed and realizes that the word key is in her arm. And Dorian shifts as Erewhon and pretends to be him, and he cuts open her arm and takes the word key. She begs him to kill her, but he can't. Then Maeve appears, kills the girl, uses her power to enter Dorian's mind and tries to control him, but Dorian tricked Maeve into believing that she could control him because the whole time he's been learning her power also. Because apparently Dorian can just learn other people's powers. So now Dorian controls Maeve's mind and reveals that he used magic to weaken Morath's foundations, and they're going to bring the whole place down. So he leaves while Maeve's like back in control of her mind, but he takes away her ability to make portals. And now Dorian has all 3 keys. And then Urine tells Elodie that she could heal her foot, but it's going to be really painful. And then Elodie's like, that's not really important right now, we'll wait till the war's over. And then Bort arrives and says that they found Vernon in the mountains, and Vernon tells her that Panatha's been sacked and now belongs to Erewhon. So Vernon tells Aelin that Maeve wants Morath to unite with Erewhon. And then also informs the whole thing about the 100 soldiers that are going to Ornith, and then Aelin leaves him locked up in a room the way he did to Elodie, and he's going to basically die of starvation, really savage again. And then Darrow shows Lysandra the last sacred text that they have in the library, and then they're going to battle against the Wyvern and the witches. And then Aiden plans to use Rolf's fire lancers, and also Lysandra needs to take Evangeline and escape through the tunnels. Aiden tells her that. Aiden also tells Lysandra that he loves her. And then the Wyverns appear in the north, but it's Manon and the 13, and they've brought the Cochrane witches with them, whatever. And then loads of witches came. And then Dorian summons Gavin to tell him he's got the keys, and he plans to take them to Aelin so they can decide. And then Lysandra goes into the tunnel under the castle, and there's a sea dragon there. Oh, or is she the sea dragon? She's the sea dragon. Yeah. And then Lysandra gets a signal, she jumps from the water and attacks the enemy as the sea dragon, yeah. And then she jumps back in the river and moves and attacks more people, la la, you know how it goes. And then the Valg princes arrive and they fight Aiden, and the Valg stabs Aiden, and then Ren saves him and kills the Valg, and Aiden's unconscious and then gets taken to a healer. You know how it goes. And then Rowan has now redone Aylin's tattoo and also gives her another one. And then Elodie and Lorcan, what's her name? Lorcan. Have a little spicy moment. And then well, it's implied, but whatever. And then Dorian finds them and tells them, I have the keys. And now Marath are trying to enter through the river that Lysandra used, and Issachar Yellowlegs attacks Abrox and Manon. But her, whatever her animal is, gets Abrox's throat in his jaws or something. And then Manon wants to save Abrox, and he's like gonna dive to the ground so that he can kill her. But basically, a bunch of stuff is happening. Like Petra kills Iskra, like all of this stuff. And then like Marath have repaired one of their towers, so they're gonna try and yield more Mitches and blast the city apart. La la la. But then Estrin and the 13 knock her down, like knock the thingy down, and tell her, knock Manon down. And tell her to live, and they'll fly over there. So all 11 of them except Estrin are taken down, but Estrin makes it and she kills the witch who's in the yield, and then Astrin's and the other 13 are all gonna make the yielding, so they blast apart the tower, like sacrificing themselves. That was quite crazy. She literally killed like 12 people in one go. Savage, right? And then Manon goes down in the blast, and everyone comes and lays flowers for the 13. Anyway, and then Rowan suggests that Aelin and Dorian can forge locks together and only give half of their power, and Aelin asks Dorian what he thinks, and so that's what they're going to do. Lovely, lovely. And then Rowan, Dorian, Aelin, Cole all go to Endover to make the lock. Dorian and Aelin cut their palms, whatever, they do the thing. They go in there. And then she realizes that the gate, realizes that to open to the gate, she has to become the gate. Aelin has become the gate. She places the ward stones into her arm and they dissolve into her blood. And then the lock is forming and they're draining power and it's killing them. Then Dorian's father appears and says, stop. And the king says he'll pay the price as he has no name and he is nameless. And then Aelin tells Dorian that one of them needs to rule. So she basically double crosses him and rips her hand from him, but in a good way. And so, like, basically is going to sacrifice herself and send him back and form the lock with his father. And then the king gives her a message from her parents saying that they love her and they're proud and that the debt has been paid enough. And then the king uses his power to forge the lock, and the lock is forged and sealed, and the rest of Aelin's like magical power vanishes. So there's no magic left in Aelin except for like a tiny little bit of water power. And then 12 figures appear, and it's like it's Deanna, Elena, Marla, and like these other gods, and they want her to send them back. And Aelin wants to bargain for a trade. She wants to trade Erewhon's soul for Elena's, and she says that she will keep Erewhon in Aurelia, but that they let Elena's soul remain in the afterworld. But instead, the gods just destroy Elena completely and tell Aelin that they don't make bargains, even though I would argue that they do, or whatever. Anyway, and then Rowan feels that the mating bond is weakening, and the gods leave through the archway and seal it and refuse to take Erewhon with them as well. And Marla gives Aelin a piece of her power, and Marla tells Aelin to seal the gate and the think of home and the word mark will guide her. Rowan inked word marks into her like tattoos. It looks like a map to him. And then Aelin opens a portal into the gods' world and sends them into the hell realm. That I just wasn't expecting. That was a plot twist I was not anticipating. Anyway, Aelin begins sealing the gate and whatever, and she throws the last piece of power into the lock and then goes back home. So Aelin's pouring through the different worlds, and she passes through something that is quite obviously the Night Court from Akatar, and you can see as she sees like Feyre and Rhysand together, and Feyre's like heavily pregnant, and Rhysand like hits her with her power to slow her down, and Aelin returns to her own body now, but her power is gone. Like, it's really small amount. So Aelin is now an immortal Fae, but gave up her mortality to something like that. Listen, they always find loopholes, and I don't understand like why. Like some things have to happen, you know what I mean? Anyway, It's been a week since the 13 sacrificed himself, and then Ansel of the Waste tells Manon that she will share the waste with her and the witches. Elodie gives Aelin Shilber's ring. Myrtle was killed, poor guy. Lysandra kisses Aiden. They have about 4 days of fighting Murat's army before they will all lose and die. Then the Lord of the North and the little folk appear, and tell Aelin to follow her, to follow them, as Dune is like coming to Orninth, whatever, and then Aiden's forces are like basically depleted. And Darrow gives Aiden back the sword of Ornth and his title, and tells Lysandra that he recognises her as the lady, and also names Evangeline as his heir, which was nice and full circle. And then Aiden, Lysandra, and the others are like basically defeated, and then a horn comes, and guess who arrives? Aiden, obviously. And she's riding the Lord of the North and like bringing her army with. Anyway, and then there's an attack, and then wyverns attack Aelin back, and Lysandra appears in wyvern form and saves her, and then Aelin and Ansel use catapults, and they're all fighting. And then Gabriel has also arrived, and he goes to find Aiden, and he tells Aiden that they found Aelin, sealed the word gate. They haven't sent Erewhon back. Gabriel needs to help seal the gate to Ornth, and so he fights outside and like shuts the gate behind him. And Aiden tries to get to him, but Aiden dies protecting the gate. No, who doesn't? Gabriel dies protecting the gate. Not Aiden. I'm pretty sure. Did Aiden die? No, he didn't. Anyway, and then the 6 Spider Valg Princess people arrive with Maeve and Erewhon, and Aelin is at the southern gate, and she's ready to fight. And she's pitting Maeve and Erewhon against each other, because she tells Erewhon that Maeve plans to destroy him, and tells him that they have healers who will destroy him, and then Aelin is fighting them. And Lorcan and Fenris like try to help Aelin against Maeve and Erewhon, and then the Ilkan appear to pick up Erewhon. And Erewhon spotted a healer and has like tried to kill her, but Urine purposefully tricked him to get him to come for her, basically. And Maeve grabs Aelin and tells her to swear the blood oath, and then Rowan, Fenris, Lorcan arrive, and Maeve attacks all of them with her power. And then Erewhon tells Urine that he's been looking for her, and they have a name for her kind of people, and they're called the Death Maidens, and they use her kind to unbind the word keys and make the word gate and make the keys. And so Erewhon gets trapped by a word mark, and then Urine uses her healing power to destroy him. Isn't it interesting? Healing to destroy, whatever. And Dorian cuts his palm and links, and then he links to her, and then basically lends her powers to him. His powers to her. And then Dorian demands that Erewhon tell him what his father's name was, and reveals that it was actually Dorian, and that his father only remembered his name briefly when he first saw Dorian born as a baby, and so he named Dorian Dorian, which is technically his own name. I hadn't clocked this whole time, though we didn't actually know the king's name. 8 books in, I did not know that. Anyway, and then they destroy Erewhon. Interesting. Anyway, and then Maeve's power is showing Rowan, Lorcan, and Fenris like all different things. So Rowan sees Aelin dead. Fenris sees his brother, who's telling him that it's all his fault. Lorcan sees Elodie, telling him that she's never going to be with him, and basically she's just playing mind games with them. But then Aelin and Maeve is trying to use all of that to get Aelin to swear the blood oath, but Aelin blasts her power, whatever little bit of it she has, and she creates portal leading like different armies, so like Fae, Wolf Riders, like Stygian spiders, like the ones that don't like Maeve. And then Aelin and Rowan distract Maeve while Fenris stabs her in the heart with Cauldron. Crazy. And then Aelin places Silber's ring on Maeve's finger and then beheads her, and then the Valg armies instantly stop and collapse, because Erwan and Maeve are now both dead. And then Aelin enters Orninth, and then Falcon finds Lysandra and tells her that he's her uncle and that his fortune is her and that it is hers. And Darrow welcomes Aelin to Orninth as a queen, and then Aelin offers Gabrielle. Oh no, Aiden does die. Aiden does die. I just now recall. Aiden dies? No, he doesn't. No, I've written this wrong. Gabrielle died earlier, but Aelin offers him the blood oath to honour him posthumously, like after his death. And then Laura can ask Elodie to tell him to stay and come to Pernant and marry him, and she does. And then Laura can plans to bind his life to Elodie so that they'll die together. So when she dies, he will die because he's supposed to be immortal, but he doesn't want to live without her. And then Urien wants to start her own tower or tour, whatever, in the north. And the Cochrans find Manon. A flower has now been spotted in the wastes, and so the curse is broken, so it won't be the wastes any longer, so he's changed the name, I guess. And then Rowan has been told that his cousin is now going to be, has told his cousin Celine that she's now going to be the queen of Dornell, and Aelin has her coronation as her queen, and then Aelin has Aiden finally swear the blood oath, and then the little folk come and give her Mab's crown because she's also the fairy queen of the west. I told you, she's a bit too much everywhere. Anyway, and then some of the Rookian have found wyvern eggs and they want to stay behind to train them. And then Cole's mother sends letters wishing for her and Terran to come and live with Cole. And then Dorian finds Manon says that the Rookian will train the wyvern to be his new aerial legion, and he wants her to come back to the waste to help them. And she says, okay, I will. And then in chapter 121, everyone is like going to where they need to go. Like the Cochrans are going where they need to go. Everyone's going like back home to wherever they are. And then the original trio, Dorian, Cole, and Aelin, all say goodbye to each other. And Aelin tells them that she loves them both. And then like in the afterworld bit, we find out that Elodie and Laura kind of married. Aiden and Lysandra plan to get married, and then right at the end of the book ends with the king's flame booming. Yeah, so I was a bit underwhelmed by the end. That's all I want to say. You know what I mean? Like, things just happen a bit too cleanly at the end, and sometimes it can feel a bit rushed. However, I still like it. I just think I had my expectations too high. And I now know that, and I will refrain from doing that in the future. I'm sorry that this was so long. Also, I've been eating this ice cream for 1 hour. Is that not crazy? Anyway, bye. Until the next time. I have more recaps coming.